It's my sincere pleasure to welcome you to all to Fiji for this Climate and Ocean Negotiators Symposium. Essentially, if you look across the harbour in Suva, the ocean appears vast and immovable and invulnerable. As human beings, we feel quite small in comparison, and it may seem that we could have never been an impact on the ocean, something so ancient and infinite than ourselves. But the reality is that human beings wield the power to completely erase oceans and ocean ecosystems, and as we know them. Little by little, year by year, we are degrading our oceans, we're devastating our reefs and ocean ecosystems. We're pushing marine life to the brink of extinction, and as a result, we're robbing our future generations of oceanic bounty that brings prosperity and security for all, and indeed an identification for many people. There may not be a region on Earth that feels the gravity of that growing threat more acutely than the Pacific. Pacific nations are vast oceanic states, with more than 90% of our national boundaries are made up of ocean. In Fiji alone, marine ecosystem services are valued at over $2.5 billion, and I think that's fairly conservative, including the over $120 million that fisheries and aquaculture contribute directly to our GDP. But for us as Pacific Islanders, the ocean is more than a source of livelihood. It forms an integral part of our identities and of how we view the world. But while the health of the ocean may hold a special level of importance in Pacific countries, make no mistake, the success of every nation and the well-being of every global citizen is tied directly to the health and sustainability of our planet's oceans, seas and marine systems. The vast importance of oceans and ecosystems to the world economy is well known, especially among this audience, as is the scale of the threat posed by ocean ecosystems as a result of climate change and other human-made impacts. We've known for some time that our inaction will bring about unprecedented devastation for the natural world, both on land and on sea. But the most recent round of scientific analysis has unveiled an even more dire future if we fail to act decisively to address those growing threats. A recent report out of the UN this week, conducted by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, estimates that there are 1 million species threatened by extinction as a direct result of human activity, including, in no small part, human-made climate change. The report, written by 145 experts from 50 countries, says our fresh and saltwater systems will be particularly hard hit, with over 40% of amphibians, 33% of reef-forming corals, and one-third marine mammals threatened by an unprecedented acceleration towards extinction. And this report comes 6 months after the IPCC report warned us that we have less than 12 years to avoid catastrophic levels of global warming. Fiji has been sounding the alarm for years in order to spur the world to action on this issue. Many of you will recall our co-chairing, together with the Swedish government, of the first ever UN Conference on Oceans back in 2017. The key legacy item of that conference was the Ocean Pathway Partnership launched during the COP23 negotiations later that same year, as Tahaulo mentioned. 2 years on, we're disappointed to report that oceans preservation still occupies a sideline role as part of the UNFCCC discussions. But as the community of nations look to revise its commitments under the Paris Agreement, it is critical that the world leaders understand the urgency in scaling up both the ambition for climate action and ocean preservation. It was in that spirit that began this week with our Ocean and NDC workshop, which put forward practical insights to increase action for ocean preservation through incorporations in NDCs. There appears to be a global consensus concerning the impacts of our changing climate on oceans and marine resources. But what seems to be missing from this global conversation is a comprehensive understanding of the intimate linkages between ocean health and climate change. That is why we see a persisting body of opinion that continues to express concern around increasing the focus on ocean matters during the climate negotiations. We in Fiji sympathize with concerns about distracting from the campaign for climate action. But the reality is that climate and oceans are far too interconnected to allow these issues to be discussed in silos. The relationship between the climate and our oceans is not a simple cause and effect relationship. The impacts go both ways. Our climate affects our oceans and our oceans affect our climate in ways that hold limitless positive potential. Oceans are the largest carbon sink on the planet, absorbing over 54 times more carbon than the atmosphere, or 90% of excess heat accumulated in the climate system. That's 1/3 of all carbon emissions stemming from human activity, making healthy oceans one of the most potent tools in our arsenal for climate action. Meanwhile, climate change is directly responsible for an over 30% rise in ocean acidification, and rising global temperatures have resulted in a 20-centimeter rise in sea levels since the beginning of the last century. But outside of the climate arena, pollution, habitat destruction, and overharvesting has also placed a crushing weight on our oceans and marine life, and that threatens the ability of our oceans to play that critical role in regulating our climate. Fiji was one of the first 2 countries in the world, the other being our neighbor, the Marshall Islands, to commit to increasing our NDCs under the Paris Agreement. In the campaign for ocean action, despite our negligible contribution to degradation of our oceans, we're also leading by example through our low-emission development strategy, which highlights our plan to decarbonize marine transportation in Fiji by 2050. Currently, shipping vessels in Pacific Island countries, on average, have been in service for around 24 years. The aging fleet is inefficient and has an unacceptably high carbon footprint. There is an urgent need to subsidize a transformation towards greener, more efficient transportation throughout the region. We are in the process of putting forward a blue shipping initiative with the Republic of Marshall Islands and possibly 5 or 6 other Pacific Island countries, with the aim of achieving a 30 to 40% reduction in fossil fuel use in marine transportation by 2030. Through Fiji's 5-year and 20-year National Development Plan, we plan to address inefficiencies in inter-island transport systems, grow marine protected areas, enhance coastal community protection, fund the relocation of vulnerable communities, and increase access to renewable energy. This will help build a more sustainable blue infrastructure for the health and sustenance of our ocean economies. Sustainability took center stage at last week's ADB annual meeting in Denrau that was held for the first time in the Pacific. And ocean health was a key issue of discussion, with the ADB which announced a US $5 billion Healthy Oceans Action Plan. This latest initiative marks a new global shift within the world of climate finance for multilateral development banks and private investments. The World Bank's Pro-Blue initiative, which is a multi-donor trust fund, supports the Healthy Ocean Initiative and SDG 14, and has now over US $75 million committed to ocean action. This response from the multilateral development partners sends a very important signal on raising the bar on ocean action. Ladies and gentlemen, Fiji anxiously awaits the release of the IPCC special report on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate in Monaco this year. We expect this report to expand on the mountain of literature that both affirms the value of ocean ecosystems and underscores the scale of the threat they face. Fiji's goal from the beginning has been to restrict global warming to 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial temperatures. We cannot lose sight of that goal or lose hope in its realization. For Pacific Island countries, there is no future without healthy and sustainable oceans. And the difference between 1.5 and 2 degrees means the difference between life and death for our people. It is an existential threat. I would like to congratulate Chile for taking on the COP25 presidency and putting on focus on ocean health by dubbing COP25 a Blue COP. This represents a continuation of the Ocean Pathway Partnership formed with Chile, Sweden, Norway, and other parties and partners during the Fijian presidency of COP23. We would also like to recognize the efforts of many different coalitions and partners who have worked through the years to ensure ocean issues have achieved more prominence in the UNFCCC so far. We have a Friends of the Ocean group of parties in the UNFCCC that provides a safe space for parties to discuss ocean options, and we will continue these dialogues more comprehensively in Bonn in June this year with countries that may have missed this symposium in Fiji, including delegates from the EU and Africa. We certainly look forward to hosting the special Negotiators Symposium in Suva for the next 2 days to Talanoa to discuss, debate and plan our way forward to ensure we integrate the ocean in the Blue COP25 in Santiago at the end of this year. This will be the first of 3 such symposiums for parties to negotiate along the blue lines in preparation for the Blue COP. Ladies and gentlemen, as we prepare for this key event, I hope the next 2 days opens our thinking to be more affirmative and innovative in our articulation of what needs to occur in the coming months. In addition to Chile and Sweden, we have members of the EU, representatives from Africa, Asia, and a very strong SIDS representation here today. And the diversity of perspectives is a tremendous asset to our discussions. I ask that we take on the task before us with shared purpose and an inclusive and open-minded approach. But above all else, I ask for ambition. The ambition to undertake the serious action necessary to protect our ocean, ecosystems, and maintain our ocean's life-giving role for the communities across the world and its life-saving role in regulating changing climate. When it comes to addressing climate change, our Honourable Prime Minister often likes to remind us that we're all in the same canoe, and we all share a future, and we all must take action. Well, I'll argue that the metaphor is even more apt when it comes to preserving our oceans and marine resources. Whether it's here in the Pacific, the coastlines of the Mediterranean, the reefs of Southeast Asia, or low-lying communities in the United States, we share a destiny, and a destiny that will be defined by a commitment in the coming days and beyond to protecting our oceans and the life they sustain. I look forward to a positive outcome to this important agenda as we voyage towards Santiago and Blue COP25. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to Fiji, and I look forward to us having very fruitful discussions in the next few days. Naka, thank you very much.